Okay, so get this. We're going deep today
Let's hear
into
from it.
Australian international student policy.
Okay.
You guys you've sent us so much, like news articles
Yeah.
and Senate hearings and just a ton of stuff, and it seems like a real shakeup's happening.
Yeah.
Basically, there's this proposed bill about managing international student numbers, and it's causing a stir.
Right.
Like, think visa backlogs,
Yeah.
financial strain on unis,
Yep.
and even worries about like wage theft.
Mm-hmm.
So, and what's crazy is like, after COVID,
Yeah.
Australia had like this massive wave of international students.
Huge.
So many that the growth was considered unsustainable.
Yeah, that's right. And that's a big part of why the government's, looking at these tighter controls now.
Right. So it's like everyone suddenly decided Australia was the place to be.
Yeah.
So let's break down what this bill, what it actually says.
Good.
It's called the Education Services for Overseas Students Amendment,
Mm-hmm.
Quality and Integrity Bill 2024.
Okay.
Very catchy. We'll just call it the ESOS bill for simplicity's sake.
Makes sense.
So basically, what does the ESOS bill, like, what does it actually try to do?
So essentially, it aims to limit how many international students each institution can enroll.
Okay.
It's all about managing that influx we were
Mm.
talking about,
Uh-uh.
because everyone gets a quality education, access to the resources they need, that sort of thing.
Right. But here's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
This bill is causing some political friction.
A little bit.
Both the coalition and the Greens are opposing it,
Right.
which makes its future, like, pretty uncertain.
Yeah, it's a bit up in the air at the moment.
Yeah, and that's just the tip of the iceberg
Oh,
to
yeah.
really get a sense of what this bill could mean. We got to go beyond just the headlines.
Absolutely.
And lucky for us, you sent over some stuff from the recent Senate estimates, which,
Yeah.
can you remind me what are Senate estimates?
Yeah, so basically there are these hearings where senators, they get to grill government officials
Okay.
on spending and activities.
Oh, okay.
It's a chance to uncover the details that don't always make it into the news.
Yeah, like a deep dive, like a deep dive within a deep dive.
Exactly.
I'm here for. Okay, so what did they
What did they find?
what kind of things did they uncover about international students specifically?
Well, a lot of different agencies weighed in, each with their own perspective.
Right.
Let's start with the Department of Education.
Go ahead.
They reported a pretty staggering number, actually,
Yeah.
over 800,000 international students.
Whoa, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, so with so many students already here,
Hmm.
do we really need enrollment caps?
Well, that's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Applications are actually up 10% compared to the same time last year.
Wow.
So demand seems to be higher than ever, despite all this talk of caps.
Right, so it almost seems like we're
Yeah.
trying to fix a problem that might not be there.
Yeah, are we creating a solution in search of a problem?
That's a good question.
That's a good question.
And thinking about it, like, logistically,
Mm-hmm.
what happens to the students who enroll
Mhm.
above the cap, like before the bill even like becomes law?
That's a really tricky situation, and it's one that the department, brought up.
Yeah.
These students might face delays, might not be able to start their studies, come January 2025,
Wow.
even if they're already living here.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's a major concern for a lot of people.
So there's this like uncertainty around who the caps would actually apply to. It's
Yeah.
not like every international student, like, are there exceptions?
Well, yeah, and that's where things get even more complex.
Okay.
There's this whole debate about
Yeah.
which categories of students might be exempt.
Okay.
So, the final number could end up being much higher
Yeah.
than the government's initial projections.
Okay. So we've got this enrollment cap puzzle, but let's not forget about the visa situation.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's another can of worms.
You sent over some like pretty concerning information about that.
Yeah, so moving on to home affairs,
Okay.
they painted a pretty worrisome picture
Yeah.
with a backlog of almost 110,000
Whoa.
onshore student visa applications.
Okay, to put that in perspective for our listener, that's like
Yeah.
almost 110,000 people just
Yeah.
like in limbo.
Living on bridging visas.
Yeah, and they don't know
I don't know if they can stay,
if they can stay.
if they can finish their studies. It's
Yeah.
a really stressful situation.
And then like what happens then?
Well, they might feel pressured to appeal to tribunals or even apply for, protection visas,
Wow.
which just puts even more strain on the system.
Right, it's like this chain reaction.
Yeah, a domino effect.
Do you think this uncertainty around the ESOS bill
Yeah.
is like part of the problem?
It's it's certainly possible.
Yeah.
All this anxiety, it's just
Mm-hmm.
students are just trying to plan their futures, and it's
Yeah.
yeah,
It's tough. And it's not just the Department of Education and Home Affairs
chiming in.
that are weighing in.
Yeah.
What did the Treasury, what insights did they offer?
So they confirmed that net overseas migration is higher than expected.
Okay.
Part of that is due to students choosing to stay
Oh,
for
interesting.
longer periods.
So they're eager to come here
Yeah.
and then they're staying longer.
Mm.
Interesting. So, but what about like the economy?
Right.
With those concerns about lower student spending and everything.
Well, the Treasury predicts continued growth
Okay.
in education exports,
Okay.
but at a slower pace
Okay.
moving forward.
So like a plateau.
Yeah, potentially. They attribute this partly to lower student spending
Oh, okay.
and also the fact that, that surge we saw after COVID, it's probably temporary.
Right. Okay. So it's not all sunshine and rainbows.
Not quite.
But let's not forget about like the human side of this.
Absolutely.
One article you mentioned concerns about potential wage theft
Right.
and exploitation in universities.
Yeah, and that's where the Fair Work Ombudsman comes in.
Right.
They play a crucial role in protecting workers' rights.
Yeah. So given all this like financial pressure
Yeah.
swirling around, do they see a link?
That's a good question, and it's something they're watching very closely.
Okay.
They haven't found any concrete evidence of it yet,
Okay.
but it's definitely something to keep an eye on.
Right. Because there's always that risk of those
Unintended consequences.
unintended consequences.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it seems like we've only just
Scratch the surface.
scratched the surface.
Yeah.
There's so much more to unpack here. What can our listener expect in the next part of our deep dive?
So in the next part, we'll delve into the political storm brewing around the ESOS bill.
Okay.
Exploring why the coalition and the Greens
Yeah.
are both pushing back against it despite having very different agendas.
Right. Okay.
We'll also look at some alternative solutions
Oh, cool.
that are being proposed because,
Yeah.
enrollment caps aren't the only way to manage these challenges.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Okay, so stay tuned, folks. We're about to get into the really interesting stuff.
The nitty-gritty.
The nitty-gritty.
Yeah. So welcome back. Before we moved on, we were just discussing
Yeah.
the potential impact of the ESOS bill
Hmm.
on Australian universities and
Mhm.
international students.
Right.
Now, let's dive a bit deeper into
Okay.
the political landscape
Let's
surrounding this legislation.
Yeah.
This bill isn't exactly sailing through Parliament. It's facing some
Yeah.
pretty stiff opposition.
Yeah, it really does seem like a political
Yeah,
potato.
bit of a tricky one.
So why are both the coalition and the Greens against it?
Well,
They're on opposite ends of the political spectrum.
yeah,
So their reasons must be pretty different, right?
you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating example
Yeah.
of how a single issue
Mm-hmm.
can create these unlikely alliances.
Right.
The coalition, while generally
Mhm.
in favor of managing immigration,
Mm-hmm.
argues that the proposed caps
Okay.
are they're just too restrictive.
Okay.
They're worried about harming
Yeah.
Australia's international education sector,
Right.
which is a major,
Yeah.
economic driver.
So for them, it's about the
The economic.
economic fallout.
Yeah, the potential economic fallout.
What about the Greens?
So the Greens are coming at it
What do you think?
from a more
Mhm.
humanitarian angle.
Okay.
They're worried about the
Mm-hmm.
potential for increased exploitation of
Got it.
international students,
Okay.
particularly those who might be forced into precarious work situations
Right.
due to financial pressure.
Huh.
Their argument
Yeah.
is that
Yeah.
simply capping enrollments
Mm-hmm.
without addressing
Yeah.
those underlying issues
Okay.
could actually make the problem worse.
So it's this clash between economic interests and
Yeah, it's this
ethical considerations.
classic dilemma.
Classic dilemma. It
Yeah.
sounds tricky.
It is. It highlights how complex this issue really is.
Right.
There's no simple solution
Yeah.
that's going to satisfy everyone.
It sounds like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube.
Yeah.
Blindfolded.
Blindfolded, exactly.
So what are some of the alternative solutions
Okay.
being discussed?
One idea is to focus on strengthening the regulatory framework
Yeah.
around international student employment.
Right. Okay.
So think stricter enforcement of existing labor laws, better support systems
Yeah.
for students
Yeah.
facing exploitation,
Okay.
and initiatives to promote ethical recruitment practices
Okay.
by universities.
That sounds promising.
Let's
But
do-
wouldn't stricter enforcement also require like
Yeah.
more resources
Because
and oversight?
it would definitely require a commitment
Yeah.
from the government
Yeah.
and relevant agencies
Right.
to allocate the necessary resources
Right.
and ensure effective oversight.
Okay.
So it's not a simple fix.
Yeah, it seems like it could be a challenge to like
Yeah.
implement effectively.
Absolutely. Another suggestion
Okay.
is to diversify
Okay.
the countries from which Australia recruits
No.
international students.
Okay. So not just like
Right. Right now,
yeah.
a significant portion come from,
Yeah.
a handful of countries,
Okay.
mainly China and India.
Right.
Broadening that pool
Right.
could potentially mitigate the impact of caps
Right.
on specific regions
Okay.
and reduce the overall reliance on any
Yeah.
single market.
So spreading the student population across
Across more countries?
more countries,
Yeah.
that seems, I mean, it seems logical.
Yeah.
But are there any potential like downsides to that?
Well, it seems simple on the surface,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
attracting students from new markets
Yeah.
would likely require, targeted marketing campaigns,
Right.
potentially tailored support services,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe even adjustments to the curriculum
Right.
to better cater to students
Yeah.
with different educational backgrounds and
Fair.
expectations.
So it sounds like any like solution is going to require careful thought and planning.
Absolutely. There's no easy answers here.
Are there any other there's also been discussion
About improving pathways to permanent residency
Okay.
for international students who graduate
Interesting.
from Australian institutions.
Okay.
The thinking is that this could make Australia
Yeah.
a more attractive destination,
Okay.
even with enrollment caps in place.
Okay, so sweetening the deal with like
Yeah, that's
sort of the possibility of
for the
staying
possibility of staying long term.
long term, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But wouldn't that also raise questions about like
It does. It
there's
raises the question of
immigration strategy?
whether prioritizing international student pathways to residency
Right.
aligns with
Yeah.
broader population goals
Right.
and labor market needs.
Okay.
These issues are all interconnected.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
makes it even trickier
Sarah, come
to
on.
find the right balance.
Okay, so we've talked about like the political back and forth
Yeah.
and all these like
Yeah.
solutions being considered.
Yeah.
But what about what about
110,000 students.
those students
Yes.
currently stuck in like visa limbo?
Yeah, their stories often get lost in the
Yeah.
in the political debates and the economic analyses.
Right.
Imagine being, thousands of miles away from home,
Mm.
having invested so much time and money in your education,
Yeah.
only to be stuck
Yeah.
in this uncertain situation,
Right.
not knowing if you'll even be able to stay and
Right.
complete your studies.
It must be just incredibly
Incredibly.
stressful and disheartening. Many of them are living on bridging visas,
Right.
which
Yeah.
often come with limited work rights,
Yeah.
restricted access to services.
Right.
They're essentially living in a constant state of anxiety,
Right.
waiting for a decision that could
Yeah.
drastically change their lives.
It's a stark reminder that like
Yeah.
policy decisions aren't just abstract concepts.
Mm.
They have like real human consequences.
Exactly. Their stories need to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
central to this conversation.
Uh-huh.
It's not just about
Right.
numbers on a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
It's about people's lives and futures.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
So we've delved into the political landscape.
But-
We've explored all these potential solutions and
Mhm.
highlighted like
Yeah.
the human impact of this.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's even more
There is.
to uncover.
There is.
What awaits us in the
So in the final part,
final part of our deep dive.
we're going to step back
Oh, okay.
and consider the long-term ramifications
Oh, wow.
of the ESOS bill,
All right.
both for Australia's global standing
Right.
in international education
Okay.
and for the future of the sector as a whole.
That sounds fascinating. I can't wait to get into it.
Yeah, should be good.
Okay, so we're back and ready to kind of wrap up our deep dive into this whole world of Australian
Right.
international student policy. We've
Yeah.
talked about like the political battles and the potential impact on unis and students
Yeah.
and the real human stories at the heart of it all.
Absolutely.
But I'm curious about like the bigger picture.
Okay.
What does all of this mean for like Australia's
Yeah.
reputation on the global stage?
Yeah, that's a really crucial question because the ESOS bill
Right.
and all the debate
Mm-hmm.
could have like ripple effects
Okay.
far beyond Australia's borders.
Wow.
It's not just about managing student numbers.
Right.
It's about how Australia is perceived as a destination for these students.
Right. So is it?
Do they want to be seen as like
Yeah.
welcoming and supportive,
Yeah.
or are they sending a different message?
So how could this bill like impact that perception?
Well, imagine you're a student
Okay.
excited about the possibility of, studying abroad, and you're doing your research, and you come across all this news about a country struggling with,
Right.
visa backlogs and potential enrollment caps and all these concerns about exploitation.
Yeah. Yeah. It would definitely
Wouldn't that
reconsider
my options?
especially if other countries are offering, a much smoother, a more welcoming experience.
Right, and there are other countries that
Canada and the UK
that are already
strong contenders.
they're vying for those same students.
So it's like a global competition for talent.
For talent, for brainpower.
Australia needs to
Australia needs to stay
yes.
competitive, because if they start to be seen as unwelcoming or bogged down in bureaucracy, they risk losing their edge.
Right.
And that could have significant long-term consequences.
Yeah, one of the articles you sent mentioned concerns about potential job losses.
Oh, right, yeah.
In the education sector.
Yeah.
If enrollment numbers drop, could that really happen?
It's a valid concern.
Yeah.
Universities and other educational institutions rely heavily on the revenue generated by international student fees.
Right.
If those revenues decline, it could lead to, budget cuts, impacting staffing, impacting course offerings, research programs.
Right.
This could have a domino effect on the wider economy, affecting everything from, housing to local businesses.
It's crazy to think about how
interconnected
all this is.
It really is.
Single
decisions about international student policy
affect
not just
far-reaching implications.
the education sector, but the entire country.
So where do we go from here? What's the next chapter?
The future of the ESOS bill is still kind of up in the air.
Right.
But these conversations are so important. They force us to confront these fundamental questions about Australia's values and priorities.
It's like we're being asked to define
what kind of
country we want to be.
Do we want to be?
Yeah.
How do we balance our economic interests with our ethical responsibilities?
Those are tough questions.
Yeah. How do we
does he answer?
Create a system that is both sustainable and fair, one that welcomes international students while also ensuring, their well-being and protecting their rights.
It sounds like there's just so much to consider.
So much to consider.
This deep dive has been incredibly insightful.
I'm glad to hear that.
I feel like I have a much better
and this is a grasp of this whole
there's a starting point.
Intricate issue.
Keep exploring these issues. Keep asking those questions. Keep the conversation going. The future of international education in Australia depends on it.
Well said. To our listener, we hope this deep dive has given you a better understanding of this
this complex,
an intricate issue. As you continue to learn and explore, remember these policy decisions have real-world impacts on individuals and communities.
Absolutely.
So stay curious, stay engaged,
stay informed,
and let's see how this all unfolds.
Let's see what happens.